There is a really simple way to test feature support in CSS today using supports at rule. In this video, I will outline how supports at rule works, why you should use it, and when. Let's dive in. Alright, first thing I want to talk about is feature detection and why is feature detection important. We have a number of fantastic CSS features coming to browsers very soon. Features like has parent selector, cascading layers, even container queries. Those are all coming to browsers very soon, and when you use those new features, you want to make sure that the browsers that still don't support them have a decent, usable experience for, well, users. And supports at rule helps you do just that. It allows you to detect support for certain CSS features directly in your CSS. So let's see how it works. Supports at rule is just simply written as at supports, and it takes a parameter, and that parameter is going to be property value combination. For example, you can detect if a browser supports display property with the value of block. So we add display block here. And if the browser supports it, we will apply this code block right here. Let's add background Rebecca purple just so we can see what's happening. As you can see, all my list items here are changed. This means that this block has been applied because I'm using Chrome here, and Chrome supports display property with the value of block. If I were to change this to something that doesn't exist, maybe display as block, you see that this code is not applied, which means that the browser does not support this property value combination. And right here, you can use any combination of a property and value to test if the browser supports that particular combination. If you're not sure if the feature is supported in certain browsers, you can always check can I use, and you can find can I use at caniuse.com. So if you want to see if the browser supports has pseudo-class, for example, you can just enter has, and you're going to see has relational pseudo-class is supported currently in Safari and in Chrome right here behind an experimental web platform features flag. So if you're not sure if a certain feature is supported in all modern browsers, then check Can I Use site, check for the property you want to use, and if you find that it's not supported across all browsers, like in this example right here, then you have to do, or you want to do, some kind of a feature detection, and supports at rule allows you to do just that. All right, let's return to our code here. Another thing you can do is you can use the not keyword to negate the expression you have right here. So if we say supports not, and you're going to see that our code is applied because we have here if the browser does not support display with the value of sblock, then we will apply this code right here. And as you can see, it's applied. You can also use and or operators to create complex rules. For example, if you want to check if the browser supports display table and it does not support display as block, and you want to apply something in that case, you can do that as well. So let's see how. If the browser supports display table, and we can wrap this into parentheses with the and keyword here, and you're going to see that our code here is applied. But if we change this and say if the browser supports display table but does not support display block, then we will apply this code right here, which is not the case in our example. Or keyword works exactly as you would expect. We can say instead or. So if the browser supports display table or does not support display block, we're gonna apply this code here, and since this browser supports display table, this block will be applied. This expression right here can be as simple or as complex as you want. You can add multiple and or keywords. You can add parentheses, whatever it is that you need in order to detect exactly what you need to detect. Another thing I want to show you is that you can actually nest supports rules. So you could do something like if the browser supports display table, we're going to apply this, and then we have another supports at rule here that says if the browser does support display block, and change this to yellow, for example, and you see that this works as well. We have nested supports rules. Another really interesting and helpful thing to know is that you can nest supports at rule directly inside of a selector. So let's see how this works. So if I were to remove this, I can add it directly to my selector right here and apply CSS that I want to apply, and you're going to see that this works. So even if I remove this right here, you're going to see that our code here is applied directly in our selector, and that way you can avoid repeating selectors in your code. You just have to use supports directly within the selector that you want to test. But what if you want to test something a bit more complex? What if you want to test if the browser supports CSS variables or CSS custom properties? And you can do this really simple if you just try to define a custom property or a variable with any kind of a value. And here the browser will try to set a custom property with the value of red. And if it can, it will apply this block of code right here. You can also test here for selector support. For example, if you want to test if a certain pseudo-class is supported or something like that, you can do that as well. And for that, you have selector function. And that selector function accepts a selector as an argument. So you can test any kind of a selector you can think of. For example, if you want to test if the browser supports plus selector or next sibling selector, you can do that. If you want to test if the browser supports a has pseudo-class, you can do this exactly like this. And since Chrome currently doesn't support has pseudo-class, this code will not be applied. And while we're on the subject of has pseudo-class, I have a great introduction on has parent selector if you want to learn how it works. Link is going to be on the screen and in the description, so check it out. And there's another feature that's coming to browsers, and that is the ability to detect @rule support. And this is going to be another function that's going to look like @rule, and you pass in as a parameter an @rule that you want to test. For example, if you want to test if the browser supports @layer or a cascading CSS layers, in that case you would write it just like this, and if the browser supports it, it will apply this block of code right here. Unfortunately, this is not supported in any browser at the moment, so it's not going to work currently, but hopefully the browsers will support it soon, and in that case you will be able to detect if the browser supports any kind of @rule that you can think of, not just layer, maybe even scope or something like that. Lastly, I want to show you that you can also use supports @rule in JavaScript. And you can do this really easily. We're going to open a console here in CodePen, and you can use CSS object with the supports function. And as a parameter, you pass in exactly the code you would pass in right here. So you can say something like display block, and if the browser supports it, it will return true. But if the browser doesn't support certain property value combination, maybe display X block, this function will return false. So you can use supports @rule basically in JavaScript as well if you ever need to. So whenever you're working with the features that might not be supported in all browsers, or if you need to support a browser that doesn't support a certain feature, make sure to use the supports @rule either in CSS or in JavaScript like we've shown, and you'll be able to ensure that all your users have a decent experience, if not an ideal or a perfect one. At least you want to provide them with something that is functional. So supports @rule is really helpful to do that, especially with the features that are coming to browsers that we want to use that are very helpful, that help you enhance your websites, your designs, but are not yet implemented by all browsers. Thank you so much for your attention. My name is Zoran Jambor. Make sure to hit that subscribe and like buttons, and I will see and hear you in the next video.